Let's go, girls.
Just tell me that I can and I'll show you things that you couldn't believe.
Not only is it WTF, Women Talking Football, not to be confused with WFT, by the way, just to get that out of the way. It's Women Talking Football on game day, baby.
Woo!
We made it. We're
We
back.
made it.
Let's go.
Our first official show.
Yeah, no kidding. First official show ever of WTF during the season.
Heck yeah.
It's WTF, Women Talking Football. We are the women, a pair of producers for Dave Campbell's Texas Football and Dave Campbell's Texan Live. I am the AP, the executive producer, Ashley Pickle. Over there, it's the AP, MH, Mallory Hartley.
Sorry, my name doesn't work. Doesn't work with the whole associate producer thing, so sorry.
Don't worry, we're workshopping it. we're in legal negotiations right now. Don't you worry. Welcome back in to Women Talking Football. Amped up, excited to be here at the start of the 2022 Texas high school football season, and we're going to keep things rolling the same way that we have been. We're going to start off with our Huddle Up. We will huddle up, and we will talk about where we're going. And then since we are the executive producer and associate producer of Dave Campbell's Texan Live, we're going to go through and tell you some of the best games to watch on TexanLive.com this weekend. We have about 40 games that will be broadcasted from Thursday all the way to Saturday. So we're going to point out which ones you absolutely cannot miss and need to have on those screens, whether that be TV, laptop, phone, wherever. You can get them mobilely on TexanLive.com. Then we will be headed way, way, way out west. We are headed to the 915.
Can I say figuratively and literally?
Yes, because we're going to El Paso. Me, figuratively, we will be talking about that. Mallory, literally, after she leaves work today, you're packing up and you're legitimately flying out to El Paso tomorrow morning.
Yeah, at 11:15, I will be on a plane heading to the Great 915, so I'm very excited.
Go.
It'll be a lot of fun. Yeah, I've never actually been to El Paso, and we'll talk about more about this later, but you guys really hyped it up, so I'm looking forward to having a good time.
And, there are some places you go and, you hype it up, and then, a person goes and you're like, okay, maybe I hyped it up too much.
Right.
El Paso is not one of those. I promise you
I'm
it'll
so
live
glad.
up to every ounce of hype. And a person who can also talk about the hype, we will be joined by KVIA sports anchor and reporter Rachel Phillips out there. She covers the El Paso and Las Cruces area. Las Cruces is in New Mexico, but it's kind of in the same vein as Texoma, where a lot of the reporters and anchors in Texoma not only cover all of that Texas portion, they also cover up into Oma, the Oklahoma area. So it's much, much like that. El Paso, Las Cruces. We're excited to have Rachel Phillips on. And then in the final part of the show, we'll go through and we'll give you our breakdown on the 915. So super excited about that. But before we get to the Texan Live games that we absolutely know that y'all need to keep an eye on this week, let's talk about what we're doing, because we will be out and about. So we started it off with Mallory, and which games, why are you going to the beautiful 915?
A lot of reasons.
The food.
Let's start off with the food.
The
yes.
views. The football.
So we are actually, our college football insider Mike Craven and I are both heading down there. He's flying up from Austin, so we're going to be
meeting up in El Paso. Nice.
Yeah, he got a rental car down there, so he's like, hey, I'll just pick you up from the airport on Friday or whatever. And I was like, all right, cool. So tomorrow night, we're going to get a little bit of high school football action in. We're going to El Paso Pebble Hills at Canutillo. So that'll be a lot of fun. We'll talk obviously more about those two teams. They got a lot of talent on both sides going into that game. But on Saturday, we are going to get some college football action because we are kicking week 0 off of the college football season at UTEP versus UNT.
Call.
So, yeah, call. That'll be nice. That'll be a lot of fun.
You can't call because you're going to be there as a reporter, but I'll be watching that one on my phone probably at the Dome, so I can call.
Yeah, I cannot. But, yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. We're going to get to the game a little bit early. We're going to tailgate a little bit. And by tailgate, I mean we're going to get some video of
At tailgate.
Yes,
You're not going to be down there like slamming beers, playing some Pong.
We're not going to meet up with the frat guys down there and having a party with them. No, we're going to be taking TikToks and stuff like that. We're gonna be taking video, getting some interviews and stuff like that. We're going to try something a little different this year in terms of the college football content that we get at actual games.
I love it.
We want to go more video style because ROF, the Republic of Football, our college football podcast, is video.
Yeah.
So we were like, hey, might as well bring a camera and a mic down there. We can get some interviews. And since we know Dana Dimmel and Seth Luttrell really well, hopefully we can get a couple of post-game interviews as well with them and coaches and stuff like that. So, yeah. And then Sunday we're going to break down both games of the weekend. So it'll be a lot of fun.
That's
a lot
awesome.
of work, but
Man,
a lot of fun.
I'm so hyped up for y'all. One, for you to get to experience El Paso for the first time. I got to go twice. I was lucky enough to get to go twice last season. Unbelievable. Some of my two favorite, I'm not going to lie, my two favorite trips that I was able to take last season. You will absolutely love it. The people there are great. The food is great. The football is great. But the other thing to note real fast, according to our buddy Colin out there, as of yesterday, there were only 3,000 tickets left to the Sun Bowl. That's like 37,000 people, basically. So the Sun Bowl itself is just breathtaking. And I have only seen it without humans in it.
Right.
So I can't even imagine how much fun that atmosphere is going to be like. And the reason that they're playing this week 0 game, if you will remember, is 3 Conference USA teams announced in, I think around June, May or June, that they were leaving Conference USA, which at that point, all the football schedules have already come out. So the Conference USA teams had to stop, look at what they were doing and go, okay, we've got to restructure. And that's how we're getting a Conference USA Western Conference game in week 0, which you very rarely see. So that'll be exciting.
Right. And we talked a little bit about this on the Republic of Football yesterday. By the way, go check that out. It's our big FBS preview, of every FBS school in the state. But we talked a little bit about this yesterday. This has got to be probably the best week 0 matchup in the entire country.
Yeah, honestly.
I think there's only like 10 or
some of them are playing in like Ireland and stuff like that.
Nebraska and Northwestern, I think, so another conference matchup. But I think this one's got to be one of the most anticipated games of the weekend, I'd have to say, just because they're just so unknown. Like, they're both even.
Right.
You know, both teams are going into this game even.
And this, on a little bit of a different scale here, hang with me, reminds me a lot of week 1 last year in the fact that when Houston and Texas Tech played, which we'll see that matchup again. But when they played in week 1, the way that we viewed that game was, hey, whoever wins this game, set for the season. Whoever loses it raises a little bit of a flag. And so this to me feels like that exact type of game in that scope of going, if North Texas can go to El Paso and do this, I think they can get over 6 wins. They're a bowl eligible team. If El Paso goes in there with a crowd of 40,000 people almost and just rolls over North Texas, El Paso's set, and they're set for another possible bowl possibility. Right. And then Seth Luttrell's going, hold on to your butts, I've got to save my job.
Right,
so I think you're right. The stakes, as crazy as it sounds, are incredibly high in this week 0 game.
Yeah, and you got injuries on both sides of the ball too, which makes it a little bit more of an even matchup. So whatever happens, and that's the thing. The reason we're going down there is because whatever happens, we're going to get good content out of it because they're both Texas college teams. Exactly. So yeah, it'll be fun. I'm super excited. But more importantly, where aren't you going this weekend, I should say, first of all? But where are you going tonight?
Tonight, myself, Matt Stepp, Greg Tepper, Greg Powers, and Ishmael Johnson are headed to the Beck, as Nick Harris so elegantly called it. We are going to Beckville, Texas to see Beckville take on Timpson. Maybe quite literally one of the best, most anticipated games of the weekend. Timpson, they have had their hat in the draw there for 2A Division I for the past couple of seasons. Obviously, Terry Bussey's coming back, but there's some other holes that they kind of have to fill. Then you look at Beckville, and it's like, well, their defensive line needs some help there, but I think that it will be an unbelievable game, so we're very excited. We're going to stop at Dairy Palace in Canton off of I-20 on the way down there. So excited. I literally just got back from taking Tepper to the airport because we had to get a rental car because the swag wagon, we can tell people, is getting rewrapped. Yeah. And if you had seen the swag wagon, old girl was in some rough shape, so it took a little while to get like the old wrap off of it, which again, if you've seen it, not surprising. But we got a rental car, so I literally sprinted back from the airport and like walked on the show.
He looks at me right before y'all leave and he goes, do you think my car is going to get towed if I leave it here? And I'm like, no, it's got to be here for like days before it gets towed. But I'm like, dude, you're fine. Your car's going to be fine.
So we're doing that tonight. And then tomorrow we have our Texas Football Days celebration on Bally Sports Southwest. It'll be Craig Way and Gary Reasons on the call with Sarah Merrifield and CT Steckel on the sideline for Shadow Creek and Manville. Super excited about that. In the studio back in Las Colinas, it'll be Greg Tepper, Aaron Hardigan, myself, and Coach Ken Purcell. So excited about that. Will be different. I went to pick out my outfits, and usually it looks like this. It's Dave Campbell's. It's the nice
kicks.
little. Oh, you can't even see
the kicks.
Whatever. Nice little pair of kicks there. Then I was like, dresses. What are dresses and heels? How do I do this? So if you want to watch me awkwardly standing in heels tomorrow, Bally Sports Southwest is where you can find that. And then I will go to sleep very late, wake up very early, and hop on a flight to San Antonio. We're going to the triple header at the Dome, the Pigskin Classic, brought to you by KSAT down there in the 210. It'll be myself, Matt Stepp, and Ishmael Johnson all down there. I believe our buddy Gabe Brooks will be there too. So super, super excited about that.
Nice.
Now, let's transition real fast before we bring on Rachel Phillips to games that you need to watch on Dave Campbell's Texan Live. We've mentioned it before. We have about 40 games, over 40 games every single week, and that's just of football. We broadcast volleyball too. There's soccer, there's basketball, all of that stuff. Right now, volleyball, football. For football alone, there's 3 games happening tonight that I really want to point you to. We actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 games on Texan Live tonight. 9. You have no excuse not to tune in and get all of your football fill this weekend. But the 3 games that I really want to point you out to. One, we'll go in time order. 6:30. If you want to put a screen on, I would go Tompkins and Cy Ranch. We have our good buddy Gavin Moritz out there on that call. So 6:30 if you want to get started early. There's a 6 o'clock game, Kingwood and Clear Creek. You can go 6:30, then 7. I think 7 is really where the headliner starts to hit, and I would go Dickinson at Atascocita.
Yeah.
So that one's over there at Turner Stadium. I think that those are 2 teams. Atascocita, historically, great program. I think that Dickinson really started to kind of break through that threshold that they had been wanting to last year. So that one kicks off at 7. Very interested to see that. Gavin Moritz, an Atascocita alum, so knows the program quite well with Coach Stump down there. And then also at 7 o'clock, go ahead and double screen that. We know everyone has a phone and a laptop or something. Want to point out Summer Creek and Klein Kane. Just a really 2 programs that have been putting out prospect after prospect each year. But Chase Snyder on the call for that one out at Klein Memorial. So there you go. Those are the top 3 that I would probably watch tonight.
I do want to point out, too, we just had a comment like this in our Facebook comments. It was somebody posting a link to the stream that was not accurate. So please watch out for those fake streaming links. They are going to be everywhere this year. And if it's not coming from our Texan Live account, it's verified, I believe, right?
I think so.
I think it's verified. I mean, you can just click on it and tell which one is verified. Or coming from our Dave Campbell's account, don't click on it. It's likely a scam. So I just saw that in the comments and was like, ooh, maybe we should make an announcement.
Yes, absolutely. So, the best way to not click on that, go to TexanLive.com. And then there's a search bar up there, so you can search whatever team you're looking for. You don't have to sit there and scroll through all 40 games that we have going on this weekend, but TexanLive.com. Moving on to tomorrow night, I think the big headliner kicks off at 7:30, and for me, that's Gilmer and Chapel Hill. We have listed it as one of our top 10 games, we think, in the state this week. So we'll have Brett Sweeney on the call there from Bulldog Stadium, but I think Gilmer is a program that we've seen in the state championship the past 2 years. They've got holes to fill. Obviously, losing quarterback Brandon Tennyson will be a big hole to fill, but Chapel Hill is a team that there is
scary
big chance we're seeing them at AT&T Stadium in December, and I feel confident in saying that. Jeff Reardon's squad, he told us 2 years ago, watch out for this class, and he was not lying. I mean, playmakers all over the field, and half of them are sophomores or juniors. So guess what? They're not going anywhere.
They're going to be back next year, too.
But that's a fantastic section of games to watch out there kind of in the eastern part of the state. Then we'll head to another 7:30 game, and we're going to go to the Austin area for this one. Wimberley and Canyon Lake. I like this. And the reason that I like this is because I now have a lot of questions for both of these 2 teams. I'm not saying that these are 2 of the best teams in the state. But Cash McCollum, the Wimberley quarterback, recently left, and now he's the quarterback at China Spring after his dad took an assistant coaching job there. So I'm more interested to watch this one to see what Wimberley and Canyon Lake are going to be like. What are we working with here? Most of my questions come from Wimberley, so this is a great week to kind of start that off. But if you're looking something before then, 7 o'clock, Cy Park and Westfield. Gavin Moritz again out there at Planet Ford Stadium, which is an immaculate stadium. It is awesome.
I've never been.
Yeah, you got to go. It's really new. I think it's only about 3 years old. But that one, interested to see that. And then finally, on Saturday, 2 games I really want to point out here. One of which scheduled by our associate producer, so I'll let her take the wheels on this. Saturday, what is happening at noon?
At noon, we've got a DFW game on Texan
Dub.
Live, guys. It's going to be Temple traveling all the way to McKinney. It's going to be I think this is a really interesting and a kind of underrated matchup.
Oh,
to
dude,
be
prospect
fair.
gold mine.
I think so too. And we're going to have our play-by-play Josh Green on the call, as well as our recruiting dude, Greg Powers. He's going to be an analyst. He's making his Texan Live debut on there. And then our intern, Armando Gomez, is going to be running the camera there. So, yeah, definitely tune in. That kicks off at noon, I believe. On Texan Live. So check that one out. Really, really fun.
Let's go. And that's our only noon game. Everything else starts at 6 or 7. So
you have no choice.
Yeah, if you're looking for midday Greg Powers, which everyone should be looking for midday Greg Powers, there you go. We got you covered. And then if you are looking for a later game, I'm very interested in Cy-Fair and Bridgeland. We'll have Michael Silvers and Brent Hallmark on the call for that. The reason that one, again, much like how we talked with Wimberley, losing their quarterback, well, that one was for a transfer.
Yep.
Transfer. Moving, whatever you want to call it. The reason that I like this one so much is because what does Bridgeland look like without Connor Wigman? Is it going to be Hudson Pollard that steps up? We don't know. So it'll be very interesting to see what Bridgeland looks like against a Cy-Fair team that is pretty good year in and year out. So there you go. TexanLive.com. We've got you covered all weekend long. We are so excited to get the season kicked off, but make sure to watch games regardless of where you're at on TexanLive.com. But up next, we're going to talk to Rachel Phillips. But before we get there, let's go ahead and hear a word from our sponsor at VCR Now. Born and bred in Texas hits a little different, as it should. Texas loves doing business with fellow Texans. VCR Now takes its Texas roots as seriously as its many partnerships with schools and universities around the state. It's also why we're so proud to promote our brand in the pages of the Texas Bible, Dave Campbell's Texas Football, and on the airwaves of Texas Football Today. Driven by producing quality broadcast video, state-of-the-art audio, and LED video scoreboards at affordable prices, VCR Now makes sure to listen to your needs in its athletic department before recommending the next best steps. Building great products is our business, and it's our focus on building meaningful long-term partnerships with our clients that sets us apart. From our 24/7, 365-day help desk, the training lab in our hometown of Red Oak, or our sports marketing business plan that puts money back in the hands of our athletic departments we support, VCR Now is built to last. Reach out to us today at info@vcrnow.com or by calling 855-GO-VCR-NOW. Again, that's info@vcrnow.com or by calling 855-GO-VCR-NOW. Mallory, we mentioned that we are going way out west. Like, way out west. We're heading out to the 915, and when we're going to talk about El Paso football, no one better to bring in than sports anchor and reporter for KVIA, Miss Rachel Phillips. Rachel, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. And yes, we're going way out west, but it couldn't be better.
You're not wrong. And I want to okay, so we'll give you this backstory, and then you get to give us a backstory. On this show, a big thing that we love to do is to make sure that people have the opportunity to tell us a little bit about themselves. And when you talk, you got a little bit of an accent, girl. How in the world, tell us where you're from and how in the world you ended up in El Paso, Texas.
No accent whatsoever. Come on. I'm from Australia. And I honestly ask myself every day how I ended up here in El Paso. I studied at Arizona State just kind of for fun. Why not go to another side of the world and study? And then applied for jobs and got offered a job here in El Paso and thought, why not?
I absolutely love that. So when you went to Arizona State, where it was broadcasting your main goal, was that what you were hoping to be able to do?
Yeah, I did my master's in sports journalism. My undergrad wasn't in journalism at all, and I kind of realized I wanted to do journalism, so just figured, go get a master's degree and get into it from there.
So not only are you not from this state, you're not from this country originally. We are very proud in Texas, as I'm sure that you know now, of our Texas high school football. And, the best high school football in the nation is what we say. What was your first impression when you got to El Paso and saw how big high school football is here in the great state of Texas?
Yeah, it's nuts. I mean, I'd watched Friday Night Lights before, so I felt like I kind of had a little bit of a clue in. I know it's a TV show, but I felt like I had a little bit of a clue in. But coming out here and actually seeing it for myself, it's something else. And I mean, I went to some practices the other week that were midnight practices, and I'm like, what on earth? Like that would never fly in Australia, not at all. Like it's almost like a professional sport. That's how it's treated here. That's how it looks anyway.
You're not wrong. And you mentioned you've been going out to these practices. You've really got your hand on the pulse of what El Paso football is going to look like heading into this 2022 season. Obviously, El Paso football it's a beast within its own, where it means a lot to the people out there in El Paso. When you go to these games, when you talk to these kids, how much does this sport mean to them?
Oh, for sure. I mean, they're so loud and proud out here. We're doing something new at Channel 7 where I work this year. I'm going out and anchoring a sportscast during our Fridays at 6 p.m. And I put out a vote to get kind of viewers to vote on which game I should go to. And we had just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people vote as to which game I should be at. Like, it's nuts. These people, like I said, it's treated like a professional sport. They are diehard fans. When I was out at these midnight practices, there are like the stands are packed. I'm like, it's midnight. What are you guys doing here? But that's how much it means to them. I mean, whether they're watching their kids, their grandkids, or they grew up and went to that school and they want to see that school do well, like, people are proud out here, and there are some good rivalries too.
That is awesome. So moving into what we can expect to see out of El Paso football when it comes to on the field, for anyone in the state of Texas that's listening, give us some of the things, the storylines that you think will be the defining kind of storylines for football in the 915 heading into the 2022 season.
Yeah, of course. I mean, honestly, this is probably one of the best caliber of players we have had in years. We've got 5 players already committed to D1 schools going into the season, and I expect to see a few more kind of come out of it as the season goes on as well. So that in itself is pretty cool. Then you got 3 teams who went to playoffs last year in Canutillo, Riverside, and Eastwood. They all made it to the Sweet 16, and I've spoken to all of those teams. And let me tell you, they are ready to go further and take it to the rest of those Texas teams. They want to go hard out there. But I think some teams to watch, which will be kind of cool, that didn't make it to the playoffs last year, will be Pebble Hills. They had a really young team last year, but they've got 14 of their starters returning this year. And then probably one of the best quarterbacks we have in El Paso and Gail Ochoa. So I expect them to have a really good run this season. And I'd be surprised if they don't end up making it to playoffs, or at least rival some of those teams that kind of went to playoffs last year. They're actually playing Canutillo in this first round game here on Friday night at 7 p.m. over at Canutillo. So that game in itself is going to be kind of a set the tone game. Canutillo obviously going to the playoffs last year. And you got Pebble Hills who are pushing for that this year. I think we'll kind of get a really good eye as to kind of where those 2 teams stand. And then another team to kind of watch out for would be Parkland. They've got a new coach in Leigh McWhirter. He's got a lot of experience, I think over 20, 30 years of experience coaching, but this is his first head coaching role. And then he's got 15 stars returning, including 2 Power 5 commits in DJ Crest and Tyrone McDuffie. So I think that team as well, there's a lot of potential there for them to do something special.
I'll actually be at that Pebble Hills and Canutillo game tomorrow night. So are you going to be there?
Oh, cool. I will not be there. No, the public voted for me to go to a different game, so I won't be there. I'll be at Eastletta and Riverside.
Oh, that'll still be a good game. Good game.
Yeah, it should be a good game.
So you mentioned a couple of those players that are obviously standouts, some at Canutillo, some at Pebble Hills. What are some of the players that you have seen maybe in this off season that might fly under people's radar a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think like Gail Ochoa, who's at Pebble Hills, people know about him, but he's not LJ Martin. Like everyone knows about LJ Martin, right? But Gail Ochoa kind of a little bit more under the radar. Him and as well as the pair at Riverside and Angel Munoz and Jose Quintano, the 2 of them, they're lethal together. They're running back and QB combo. They've been playing together since they were in 7th grade. And so when I talked to them, they just said, like, we know each other like the back of our hands. We're pretty much the same player. So when we're out there on the field, like, we just know what each other's doing. And I think that's going to be really cool to see, because they're now in their senior season looking to kind of make something happen and with a really good Riverside team. So I think those two will be really cool to watch. And I wouldn't be surprised if they end up committing to some D1 schools as well.
Obviously, a ton of outstanding rivalries out there. Just, I mean, really your pick of the litter. Which game and the atmosphere around the game do you get most excited for every time the season rolls around?
Well, honestly, this game that I'm going to on Friday, we've got East Letter versus Riverside. It's the Battle of the Lower Valley, and I would probably say people in the Lower Valley are probably the proudest in El Paso. And some people might come at me for that, but I'm going with it. They are ridiculous, and they were some of the teams that had midnight practices, and that battle, like, people were very keen on their team winning. So I that one I'm pretty keen for, and I've already been invited to a few tailgates before the game. So I think that in itself says it's going to be a pretty big game, and there's a lot of passion on the line.
Absolutely. A couple more questions here. One of which, I want to get your take on this. Obviously, you know, teams like Eastwood, they tend to make their way across the state, specifically in non-district play. This year, they're starting out the season heading all the way really over into our neck of the woods in South Lake Carroll in the DFW. How does everyone around El Paso feel about those players getting the opportunity to kind of break out of that El Paso bubble and travel to the other parts of the states? Obviously, incredibly long road trips, but really competition that they might not be able to find right in their backyard.
Yeah, I think honestly probably other teams are a little jealous that Eastwood are getting that experience. It's crucial. I mean, they're a team that wants to make the playoffs again. They want to do their Sweet 16 run again. And so by playing these like big teams like South Lake Carroll this early on in the season, they really get a kind of indicator of where they stand and what they need to do to make sure that they're there come the end of the season. And I mean, they were on a bus. I think they were getting on a bus at like 11 p.m. last night. I saw them kind of loading up. So, I mean, they've got the travel ahead of them, but I mean, that prepares them because come playoffs time as well, if they do make it, they've got to travel out that way. You know, the playoffs aren't they're not being played here. So, I mean, it's great experience not only for the caliber of players, but even just getting ready for that kind of road trip and being prepared. And I think honestly, from a team standpoint too, how can that not bring you together and get you hyped for the season?
Absolutely.
And obviously, there's a lot of El Paso teams out there that you have to cover from 6A all the way down to 6-man football. Are there any teams that you are seeing that you think, hey, I think they're going to make it all the way to AT&T Stadium? To state championship, yeah.
That's a big question. I mean, if I had to pick one team out of all of our El Paso teams, I think I'm going with Riverside.
Really? Okay.
I think they've got a really good shot this season. Like I said, they got tons of stars returning, and that combo at QB and running back, and then Coach Gary Ricotta out there. They're a really passionate team, and I know they're hungry after last season. They want to go further. I think I'd say Pebble Hills too are a shot. But it's big because, I mean, it's tough. I mean, I believe in these El Paso teams, but you go to the rest of Texas, there are so many teams, and they're bigger. I think they're just bigger players in general, which makes it tough. I mean, it's just I was talking to the Canattia head coach the other day, and he was saying, you know, once you get into that second round, everyone's good. Like, everyone's good, but we want to be better than them, but it's hard.
She's Rachel Phillips of KVIA. Rachel, we've got one more question here for you. This is absolutely the hardest question you'll have to answer. So I was telling Mallory, I made it out to El Paso twice last year, and my favorite restaurant that I had when I was out there was Ellen J's.
That was the first restaurant I was ever taken to in El Paso.
And is it not fantastic?
All right, I'm sold.
It is great. It is great.
So I told her, I was like,
fan?
You have to go to Ellen J's. So she's been tasked with going to Ellen J's. I was like, I don't care what else you do out there, but you have to go to Ellen J's. So besides Ellen J's, what other restaurant recommendations would you give folks around the state of Texas when they make their way out to the 915?
Ellen J's is a good one because you get a good mix of everything. But I think if you want to stick with Mexican, Leo's is pretty high up there. I'm a big fan of that one. Great margaritas too, if you like to have a good drink.
A girl after our own heart.
Yeah, I know. I am Australian, so you know.
Too great. She is Rachel Phillips of KVIA. You can follow her on Twitter at Rachel_KVIA. Rachel, man, we appreciate you so much, and hopefully Mallory will be able to swing by and say hi at some point this weekend.
Yeah, I'd love that for sure. Hit me up.
There she goes. Rachel Phillips out of KVIA in the El Paso and Las Cruces areas. Really appreciate her joining us on. The accent, exceptional. The wealth of knowledge about football out there, exceptional. She's fantastic. I'm a huge Rachel Phillips fan.
I want to know if, now this happened with my uncle too, because he's from New Zealand. And so when he first came over here, it was really hard to understand what he was saying. Because the accent was so thick. And it was super easy to understand her. So I wonder when she first came over here if there was kind of a bit of a language barrier between her and maybe some folks in El Paso or even in Arizona or something like that.
Right, yeah. Well, and it's funny because obviously when you think about going and doing broadcasting you'll notice this with a lot of like baseball reporters. There's a lot of baseball players that their primary language is Spanish. And so a lot of very successful baseball broadcasters, whether that be sideline reporters or on-air talent in the booth and stuff, they're fluent in Spanish. So that way they can do it. So you obviously... Australians are speaking English, but the difference in broadcasting clear and concise is something that anyone has to work on, much less with an accent. I think, she's awesome. But the unbelievable insight there from Rachel Phillips on the state of El Paso football. And so very excited for that. Now, let's go ahead and we'll break down what we think about El Paso. And we're doing this a little bit differently. If you've watched some of our other episodes, we've typically done graphics that have the rankings for statewide teams in the regions that we've done so far. We do have one El Paso team that is ranked in the state, and that is Canutillo. They're ranked number 21 in 5A Division II in our preseason Dave Campbell's ranking, but they're the only El Paso team that's state ranked. So instead of doing state rankings, we have an unfeeling robot, the DCTF computer. And the DCTF computer is very smart. It has formulas that it uses to give every single team in the state of Texas a rating. Now, some of it goes into obviously your games, how big of margins that you won by, how big of margins you lost by, and it moves every single week. It recalculates, it goes. It also has to do with the level of competition you're playing, what classification you're in. I won't get into all the weeds there, but every single team has a rating. So what I did was I went through and looked at there are 34 total teams that we have listed in our El Paso region, ranging from 6A all the way down to 1A. And I went through and looked at every single one's rating, and then I took the highest rated team from the DCTF computer in each classification. So let's go ahead and get to that. We will start off with 6A. The highest rated team, according to the Dave Campbell's Texas football computer in the El Paso region in 6A, is El Paso Pebble Hills. We'll talk about them a little bit more later. That's obviously where Mallory is going. You heard Rachel say it, one of the most anticipated games in the El Paso region starting off in week 1. But there it is for El Paso Hills for 6A. And may I remind you that in 6A, that's actually all of District 1. Right. All of District 1 in 6A is all of the 6A El Paso schools.
It was easy to do research because it's all right there.
Because it's all in one page of the magazine. I love this. 9 teams in 6A in El Paso. All of them make up District 1.
Yeah.
Moving on to 5A Division 1, El Paso Del Valle, I believe. Yeah, because Del Valle is the Austin one. Del Valle is the El Paso one. So El Paso Del Valle is 5A Division 1, and then 5A Division 2, which is the game that you will be at. And like we said, the singular state-ranked team in our Dave Campbell's Texas Football / Associated Press preseason rankings is number 21 in Canutillo. So you'll be out there watching LJ Martin do his thing against what looks to be a bludgeon of a Pebble Hills team.
God, it's going to be so good. That Canutillo team, they're returning 13 guys altogether. And, I think we'll talk more about him later. But really, that difference in that game is going to be LJ Martin. Because he's such a step level.
I saw him play when I went last year in week 1. It was Canutillo and it was El Paso Burgess. And El Paso Burgess had the kid. His name's escaping me, but he went to Mizzou, the Mizzou commit, and he was the headliner going into it and all that stuff. And then LJ kind of came out there. And after the first quarter, I texted our producer at Bally and I was like, "Yo, y'all know about this LJ Martin kid?"
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's going to be interesting too because El Paso Pebble Hills isn't typically known for their defense, but it's really improved in this offseason. So it's going to be super interesting to see LJ Martin go up against this, what isn't typically good defense, but it's going to be pretty much improved this year.
That's awesome. Moving on now To our 4A classifications, the highest projected team by the DCTF computer in 4A Division 1 is El Paso Riverside. You heard Rachel say that she thinks that if any team has the possibility to push their way very, very deep into the playoffs, it would be El Paso Riverside, and we'll talk about them. But then in 4A Division 2, it is Clint. Going on now to our smaller classifications in the El Paso Region 3 Division 2, it's Tornillo. 2A Division 1, it is Anthony, which is, I think, the furthest west team in the entire state of Texas, because they are legitimately like the border town out there.
Yeah, and they play a lot of New Mexico high school teams too, so that would make sense. You know, it's just they're probably closer to a lot of those New Mexico teams than they are in their own district. You know?
Yeah, a lot of the district that they got put into in realignment was actually kind of surprising. Let me pull that up real fast because I want to make sure that I get this right. Because I know that some of the teams are going to have like 8-hour drives for a district game, which for Anthony is something that they're used to. Yeah, Cristobal, Forsan, Ozona, Reagan County, and Sonora. Like,
Jeez.
I'm talking far drives. And so it was more shocking to the teams like Cristobal and Sonora and Ozona, because they're all right kind of in that mid, not even almost, I mean, they're almost even on the outer edge of the Concho Valley at that point.
Right.
So there will be some heavy traveling going on there. Then going on to our 6-man classifications, we look at 1A Division 1. You will find Van Horn, and then 1A Division 2, it is Sierra Blanca. So there you go. Those are the highest rated teams in each classification. According to the DCTF computer, heading into the 2022 season, they're in the 915. So there's the teams. Let's talk players, and we go over to our coordinator of vibes.
Coordinator of vibes.
That's a good one. I think I finally nailed it.
All right. Well, how does that have anything to do with players? Well, I guess players can put off good vibes.
Yeah,
so
it's good vibes only. We're wishing these studs the best.
All right, I'll take it.
Coordinator of vibes. I think I nailed that one. Yeah.
All right.
Good job, Pickle.
Anyways, let's move on. You've already heard Rachel mention a couple of them, but we're going to give you a couple more players to watch in the El Paso region, starting off with El Paso Pebble Hills linebacker Bobby. I think it's Deal.
Yeah.
It could be Dial. I don't know, but Deal. I think I've heard it both
vibes.
ways, so
Nothing but vibes.
Vibes, literally. He is the District 1 6A preseason defensive MVP, which shouldn't come as a surprise, considering he had 70 tackles last year, 3 tackles for loss, and 2 interceptions. He's the real deal.
Boo! Cut it off! Cut her off!
And like I mentioned earlier, El Paso Pebble Hills is really not a team that's known for their stout defense, but he's going to be definitely leading the front 7 and should be a noticeable improvement from last year.
Oh, yeah, and a pretty big guy, too, so that helps a lot. Like you said, he was just kind of that ball hawk right there, which is an interesting term to use, because usually I would say that you use ball hawk for the secondary.
Right.
But he really is.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, a ball hawk off the line, if you want to say. But, yeah, he's quick. He gets to him. And, yeah, I think that you're able to Pebble Hills was able to take what Bobby Deal was doing and go, hey, look, guys, this is how we win football games. And it clearly worked for Pebble Hills.
Right. Moving down, we got El Paso del Valle, quarterback Jesse Ramos. Del Valle, that's going to mess me up the whole time.
You have to think about it.
I know, right? Is the favorite to win District 1 5A Division 1. And they got a fantastic quarterback to do just the job. He fits into their air raid system really, really well. He's also their preseason offensive MVP in District 1 5A Division 1. I'll read you some of his stats from last year. It's pretty impressive, I'd say. Nearly passed for almost 2,000 yards, 1,834 to be exact, 18 touchdowns passing, 409 yards rushing, and 14 rushing touchdowns. Truly a dual threat quarterback, and that's exactly what they need.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, really, you look at it, Del Valle is a tradition-rich program out there. I don't think that's news to anyone, but they got off to a hot start. I mean, going 5-1 last year, they really kind of put themselves on the map, specifically in that non-district that led them well into the dreaded district against all of the teams in their backyard. But like you said, having a dual threat quarterback at this level is really where you can hit hay.
Well, and it's so much more common too in like the high school level. Obviously, as you move up to college and pros and stuff, you see more pro style quarterbacks. But like a dual threat quarterback is always such a good option to have in the high school level. Let's move down to Clint Horizon defensive back Aaron Segala. Let's switch gears a little bit to the defensive side of that District 1 5A Division 1. He is the preseason defensive MVP in that district. Like I said, that district's pretty stacked, honestly. He picked the ball off 11 times last year. Not a mathematician. I say that every single time, but that is pretty dang good. He definitely leads that Scorpions secondary without a doubt. Something super interesting, too. We will actually get to see Aaron Segala going head-to-head with El Paso del Valle's quarterback, Jesse Ramos.
There we go.
Because they're going to play, I think it was week 6 of the season. And like we said earlier, that quarterback is definitely a dual threat, but I think with the threat of Segala on the field, he'll probably be running the ball a lot more.
Yeah, it's a good little district they got out there. I think the thing with Aaron that speaks the most to, one, he's very good, but the kid is really quick. He's on the track team there.
Yeah.
I mean, they made it to the regionals in the 4x1, the regionals in the 4x4. Like, this is a kid, and we talk so much, and you'll talk to the recruiting guys, that speed and track genuinely helps an athlete. He's a prime example of that.
For sure. This guy, of course, needs no introduction. Canutillo athlete LJ Martin. He's going to play at Stanford as a running back, but we label him an athlete because he's got versatility and he can play at quarterback, wide receiver, and running back. So he could basically play their whole offense if he wanted to.
He is.
But yeah, he returns with nearly 1,000 rushing yards. Oh, excuse me, that is not correct. Nearly 3,000 rushing yards, excuse me. 29 touchdowns, 16 receiving touchdowns. And if you talk to Scott Brooks, he's going to say that this is probably the best player that he has ever coached in his coaching tenure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, like I said, last year I was watching Chavoris Jones for Burgess, and he's an outstanding player, don't get me wrong. And that was week 1 of the season. There was still a lot to figure out. But LJ Martin, from the moment he walked onto that field, I was like, that kid is special. That kid's someone that people in the state need to be made aware of, and he continued to prove that week after week, and I think that he's got a huge season ahead of him. Hopefully he can stay healthy.
Right. If there was a Heisman at the high school level, it'd probably go to this kid because he is their entire team, Canutillo's team. I mean, he takes them from a pretty good team to an elite team. Moving down to Fabin's running back, also defensive back, Isaac. I practiced this earlier. Urrutia. Urrutia.
Sorry, Isaac.
Yeah, we're not good. If you can't tell, we're not very good at names. But he's on our Class 4A preseason All-State team. He returns with nearly 1,000 rushing yards, 995 to be exact. Almost there.
No,
7 touchdowns.
that's painful.
He had 7 touchdowns and then also 112 tackles last season, which is really impressive. He's playing both sides of the ball. And Fabin's isn't necessarily a historically good team, but with a guy like this guy playing on both sides of the ball, they could be a real dark horse in District 1 4A Division 2. Up next, we got Tornillo athlete Mike Ibarra. He's on our District 1 3A D2 preseason defensive MVP list. He also plays both ways. We'll also get to see Isaac Urrutia and Mike Ibarra match up week 2 of the season. We've got some classification matchups there. Already mentioned this guy, but he's played a major part in the reconstruction of this program. Moving down to our last guy to watch from the El Paso region, we've got Van Horn defensive back Bryce Verdell. He's on the Class 1A preseason All-State team as a defensive back, but he also plays a little bit of running back. And the Eagles are going to look definitely for his senior leadership this season in hopes for really another district title.
Yeah, no doubt. I think Van Horn has the possibility to be able to do that. So
sure. They'll definitely look for him to lead them that way. So
yeah, they got some studs out there, man. It's
really
nothing to sleep on. It really isn't, and I hope people really begin to realize that about the El Paso region. You're looking at like legit contenders. They're legit playmakers
definitely.
that can make a difference in a game. And that kind of leads us perfectly into our final thing here. We like to talk about storylines to follow. We've got 2 of them today. And the reason that segues perfectly into that is El Paso teams, and we talked about it a little bit with Rachel, specifically in the past couple of years, it's been El Paso Eastwood, the Troopers, under Julio Lopez. Some of them try to schedule games that they know will help prepare their teams for making the playoffs.
Right.
And guess what? You're never looking at a short, easy drive when you're doing that. We're talking about going to San Antonio to play teams. We're talking about going to DFW to play teams. We're talking about going, all of these different places, kind of the Concho Valley area to play teams. And the reason they do that is, like Rachel said, not only one, to test yourself against the best of the best, but also two, to prep for what it's like to make road trips like that. I mean, we're talking 10 hours to get to play South Lake Carroll. 10 hours. And that's on a bus. So you want to extend that out to 2 or 3 hours even longer. You're probably looking at a 13, 14-hour trip because you've got, say, 50 guys that have got to stop and use the bathroom. They've got to stop and eat. They need to stop and stretch, So it really is. It takes a toll on your physical ability. It takes a toll on your mental ability, and they want to go ahead and try and hammer that down before they get to round 1, and they're so excited for the playoffs, and then it's like, we don't know. We're not conditioned to take this 10-hour bus trip.
Right.
So we want to go through, and this one is Road Warriors Without Fear. That's kind of how I see these El Paso teams that are breaking out of that region and saying, hey, look, we're ready to bow up against the best. And just a couple that I wrote down here to look out for. Week 1, Eastwood, we've mentioned it a couple times. They are playing South Lake Carroll. They wanted to go up against the best of the best, and they didn't say, no, we're not going to meet in San Angelo. No, we're not going to meet in Lubbock. We are going to drive all the way there, and they're going to face off against Coach Riley Dodge and his South Lake Dragons. So you want to talk about bowing up. That's bowing up.
Dude, that's just so smart, though. Like you mentioned earlier, like when you get down to the regional semis, the regional finals, like you're going far. And if you make it to the state semis, if you're making it to the state finals, you're traveling all the way to AT&T Stadium. So when you're going to go ahead and get those reps early on in the season, getting used to that travel time, getting used to waking up and taking a 10-hour road trip 2-3 weeks in a row, it's just so smart to do. And you have the ability to play the best of the best at that point too, because if you want to be the best, we say it all the time, you got to beat the best,
Absolutely. And some of this also, not being naive here, some of this also goes, do they have the means to make the trip like this? Because a lot of schools have to save up that money of, hey, if we make it, we need the money to be able to do it during the playoffs. So Eastwood, a fortunate program that's able to go and do that kind of things. And then also Socorro, El Paso Socorro, I saw them last year at R.R. Jones Stadium. We saw them play at El Paso High. We saw them break the streak. So I guess we're good luck charms to Socorro, but they're going to Lubbock, which you might think, oh, West Texas and West Texas. Like, no, guys, that's still a pretty stinking far drive from El Paso to Lubbock. Like, that's not just, oh, everything in West Texas is the same. Like, very different.
Very, very different.
So they're playing, and then El Paso Franklin is playing Las Cruces Centennial in New Mexico. Like we mentioned, it's crazy because that's across state borders, but it's actually a pretty close game. Like, it's really not that far. We talked about Rachel covering both El Paso and Las Cruces. That's kind of in the same thing, but we put it on there because, hey, they are playing a team in New Mexico.
Right.
Week 2, Eastwood is playing Las Cruces, and East Lake is playing Rio Rancho in New Mexico. So there's one more New Mexico game in week 3, and it's Bel Air playing Chaparral out there. But another week 3 game to keep your eye on if you're wanting to see an El Paso team kind of making a trek. Montwood is playing San Angelo Central. So they'll be making the trip down to the Concho Valley out there to go play them. So, it is what it is. When you're way out there, you buckle up and you learn how to travel.
Yeah. I mean, you have to. Or like you said earlier, like it's just going to come hard if you're going to make it that far into the playoffs and you got to play teams from far away. Like, might as well get used to it now.
No doubt. And then our final storyline to follow here as we talk about the El Paso region, and it is shocking the state who has the best shot. We asked Rachel, and she said Riverside, and I don't think she's far off from that. This is a team that shocked the state last year. I mean, they really, really came out of nowhere and had an unbelievable season, and they have a ton of that talent returning. Now that's the thing. Does the success continue? And it's one of those where, guess what? Now you have the target on your back. You're not sneaking up on people. But I think ultimately they have the talent to do it. They have the talent to go pretty far. I think that she was very right in her pick there. If I had to say anyone, I think that Eastwood, we talked about it. You know, they made it 3 rounds deep in the playoff last year. They lost to Prosper in a regional semifinal, which was a good game. It's not like they got absolutely blown out of the water. And they've got, I feel like, a fairly decent shot to do it because they inevitably, I think it's guaranteed almost that they would go to 6AD2. They are the 3rd largest team, I believe, in that district that won 6A. And the other 2 teams that are larger than them are likely to make the playoffs. And that's kind of funny because where was it? I had this written down somewhere. Pebble Hills obviously is in that district. We talk about how good they are, but they're the largest team in that 1-6A. So they're going to go Division 1, and that's where you run into issues, because if you look at 6A Division 1, Region 1, then you're running into the possibility of a South Lake Carroll, of an Allen, of an Arlington Martin. So 6A Division 1 is lethal in Region 1. I think the reason that El Paso Eastwood has such a good chance is the competition in Region 1 of 6A Division 2 is just not as stout with that. You have a likely chance. Now, their goal is going to be to make it to that 4th round this year, but I don't see many hurdles in their way of getting back to the 3rd round. It's going to be at that point, then you're facing a pretty good DFW team at that point. But as I think Eastwood has a good chance, again, just because they would absolutely most likely be going into that 6A Division 2 Region 1.
Right. I want to also point out Tornillo, too, a little bit. Now, I don't think that they are necessarily going to make it to state or make it that far into the playoffs, but their road this past couple years has just been extraordinary. A couple years back, and I don't know how much weight this has to it, but they won their first district game in years back in 2020. District game back in 2020. And now we have them, they're the highest rated 3A, Division 2, I believe, team in the El Paso region. And that's all because you got that athlete, Mike Ibarra, that we pointed out earlier. But, yeah, I just wanted to point them out a little bit to keep your eye on them, because just from the transformation that they've made this past couple years in growing that program, I mean, it's unbelievable. Well,
and just to point out one more team here, we talked about Canutillo a lot. Obviously, they are state ranked. They're 21 in 5A Division 2. Here's the issue for Canutillo, man. That Region 1, it has been a more fair playing field in the past. They made it far. They got bounced, I think, in the 3rd round again to Wichita Falls Rider, which historically in the past couple of years has been a really good team. There's also teams like Abilene Cooper that we have state ranked, and they typically end up running into them. Now you have the glaring beast in Region 1, 5A Division 2 in Argyle. They're moving up from 4A Division 1, and that in and of itself, especially with how the bracket would play out of likely meeting up early on, that is a death sentence having Argyle in there. So I think that they're absolutely a playoff team. I think that they deserve to be a state ranked team, but they would have to they'd have to be geared up and ready to go, because Argyle there is kind of this big looming cloud for really all of Region 1, because before then it was a pretty, even keel playing field. But those nasty Eagles make it in there, and it gets
well, and Argyle also brings a lot of size and a lot of talent all across the board. You know, when you talk about Canutillo, of course you've got probably one of the best running backs in the state, but I mean, who else do you have?
Your defense is going to have to step up.
Yes, you're going to have to develop in each phase of the football game, or you're not going to go far in the playoffs.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams that you can beat with if you have the guy. There's a lot of teams that you beat. Todd Rogers has Argyle in every phase, and it's just it's hard for it's doable, but it's hard for one guy to carry the load, especially that far into the season. If you're talking about the 12th game or the 11th game, 12th game of the season, Oof.
I mean, you can't give LJ Martin 40 carries a game.
Right.
Like, you just cannot do that. You've got to have other guys step up. And when you look
And maybe
all
they
across,
will. Like,
right. We'll see this weekend.
I'm sure he's a great
I'll let you
mentor
know.
too. You know,
Right,
I was gonna say, yeah,
absolutely.
Mallory Hartley will have your full
I'll be
LJ
there.
Martin report next Thursday.
I'll give you some highlights and maybe an interview too. We'll see. But I was just going to say too, before we move on, when you look at every state championship team year in and year out, they are complete all across the board. You know, they've got depth, they've got size, and they've got, in every phase of the football game, they are developed, you know? And so that's how you got to be. That's how you have to be to win a state championship.
No doubt. So there it is, our El Paso regional breakdown. Love the area, love the people, love the football. Incredibly excited for you to get to go out there and
it'd be fun.
experience this week. I am extremely jealous.
That's okay. I'll send you pictures.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll be in the 210, which everyone knows is like one of my favorite parts of Texas. So like, if I was gonna be anywhere while you were in El Paso, I needed it to be the 210 to make my heart feel good.
And may I remind you, not only am I going to El Paso, I am going to be in El Paso watching the Mean Green play some football. Now, of course, I can't actively yell "caw" because I love UTEP too. I love Dana
I'll
Dibble.
call
I
you
love
and you
that
can put it on
program, but
speaker.
We'll see. You can be my voice for this weekend, but I'm super, super excited. It'll be cool.
Yeah, so there we go. Happy game day. All you dorks, we're excited. We're pumped. I mean, just amped up, like literally juiced up that Texas high school football is back. Thank you for bearing with us until we got here. But there it is, our El Paso regional breakdown. We want to thank our guest, Rachel Phillips. Again, follow her, Rachel_KVIA on Twitter. But yeah, I've got to get on the road to Beckville. You've got to go home and pack for El Paso. It's football season, baby. We're back. We will see you next Thursday at 2 for WTF Women Talking Football.